here on the Arcanum, and this evening we have Brandon Dodd with us, and we're going to be doing his Level 4 critique. Brandon's got some great stuff that he's doing, especially in the world of underwater photography, which is really, really exciting for me. But at this point, I'm going to turn it over to you, Brandon. If you just give us a brief bio of yourself and what type of photography you like and where you consider yourself heading in the future with this.
Okay, my name is Brandon Dodd. I live in Arizona. I got into photography to do underwater. I really enjoy underwater photography, and I needed something to do while I was on land, because I can't be under the water all the time. So I jumped into, I also enjoy doing landscapes and astrophotography. I dabble in HDR stuff, but I think that kind of goes with doing landscape, in color. I think the HDR helps in, sunrises and sunsets a lot of times, but that's just me. I like the look better. So eventually I'd like to do photography full time. Whatever it is. Underwater would be great, but there's no real paying jobs out there except for like National Geographic that do paid underwater photographers. But that would be a dream of mine. Travel around, take underwater pictures, travel pictures in general. But yeah. Is that all the questions, I think?
Yeah, you did. And boy, you know what? Don't give up on that underwater paid photographer idea, because believe it or not, there are state organizations, like here in South Carolina, it's the DNR, and Florida, it's also called the DNR, but Florida, of all of the states, has a whole team of underwater photographers that go out and do reef surveys and do all kinds of stuff. So there is hope for you in that.
Oh, good.
Okay. All right. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to share my desktop with y'all.
Okay.
You like that quaint Southern term, y'all?
Y'all.
Y'all. Bring up my Photoshop, and boy, tell us about this cute seal of yours.
This is a sea lion I took a picture of in Mexico a couple months back. I was doing a safety stop, so hanging out about 15 or 20 feet, and this one kept hanging out. My camera was off because I don't like to take pictures when I'm doing my safety stop, but the bottom was just underneath me, so I wasn't worried about anything going wrong. But it just kept doing loops and circles around myself and another photographer to my right, and she just came up and plopped down right there and turned my camera back on, grabbed a shot. The other photographer next to me did as well, and this was it. I really liked it. I liked how close she got, and kind of the look. She's looking at him, but I still, it helped me get a good eye shot of her. So.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Now, how many flashes did you use for this one?
2 strobes.
Okay. How deep were we?
About 20 feet.
Okay.
Maybe. So.
All right. Wow. What a capture, Brandon. I love the composition. Really, the subject of the sea lion, okay, is, of course, is her head and her eye. And the fact that you have those crystal clear with those beautifully sharp whiskers. And I like it that she's looking over at the other photographer, because that makes it feel less staged, if you know what I mean.
Mm-hmm.
It would have been nice to be able to see this flipper here, but that's such a small thing that it really doesn't matter. You've got good space around the entire sea lion.
Mm-hmm.
And given that really the main subject is the head, and this is where the best light is, this really works well. The background falls off to a nice bokeh. And having said that, let's look at this real quick. F9 at 1/100th of a second. Okay, and this is with your 5. Is this the new 5D?
5 DSR, yeah.
Okay, so all right.
It's probably the first trip I went underwater with that camera.
Uh-huh. The detail in her eye, this is amazing. Is this that secondary eyelid here?
I don't know. I mean, it zooms in really well, so if you want to zoom in, but I haven't paid attention. I don't know the anatomy of the sea lions very much, but um,
Yeah, boy, that is an amazing shot. Yeah, we can see the schmutz that the strobe is picking up underwater, which that's just the necessity of underwater shots. I also find it interesting, and this is one thing I haven't noticed with a lot of the underwater photography that I've looked at over the years, is you have this warm, wonderful white balance on her head here based on the white balancing for the flashes.
hmm
And then the rest of her drops off to this aqua color. Um, I don't know. There's just something mesmerizing about this entire concept of moving from one white balance to another because of the distance in the water.
hmm
This is just stunning. It's not often that I see a level 4 critique image from a new member um, to the cohort that is just this good, this pleasing. How far away was she from you?
What lens did I use on that one?
I can tell you.
Possibly my 100 mm, because that's usually what I shoot underwater.
100 millimeter, yeah.
Yeah. So I would say she's probably a good 5 or 8 feet from me.
Wow, that is amazing. Um, as much as it pains me to have to say this, I can find very little to say negative about this. It's just all super positive. You did an excellent job. This image is going to get the top score of a 3. Now, when you're underwater, I realize that you can't sweep the edges. So we have to take that into account when we're critiquing this. Can you tell me what this yellow reflection is down here?
Um,
Is this an artifact of the flash?
no, I believe that would be a fish. There's probably a
Oh, swimming by.
yeah.
Okay.
So
All
it
right.
might have been much closer, or it could have been one of the ones that swim in that little coral down underneath his
Sure.
her
Sure.
face.
Yeah, that would be a little tough to clone that one out, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
But boy, this is a very strong image. You have a lot to be proud of here. I bet you've gotten a lot of really good comments on that. All
Yeah,
right.
I think so.
All right. The seahorse.
I was on a mission to find a seahorse. This trip was pretty much all my fiance was with me on this one, and she loves seahorses. She's never seen a seahorse in real life, and if you've ever heard a person squeal underwater, it's a sound to be heard.
You really
um,
liked it, huh? Now,
yeah.
were you in the kelp? Because I know a lot of that's where the seahorses like.
Uh, this seahorse was right off the edge of some kelp in a rock,
Okay.
and the issue I find with shooting seahorse, because I didn't know how rare they are, but I go so slow when I swim, I find them all the time in places where they're not too common. So I've, you know, tried to shoot them before, and until I realized how rare they were, I didn't spend the time uh, required to, try to get a decent shot. They like being, down in crevices most of the time, and they turn their back to you whenever possible because they're trying to blend in, and once you see their eyes, you know it's a seahorse. So I spent a good 25 minutes shooting this particular seahorse, and that's the best shot I got. So I wish I could have got the whole thing, but the rest of it just kind of disappears in between two
No,
rocks.
I actually like uh, the portrait of this. I mean, this is more like a portrait shot that you would shoot in a studio.
Hmm.
It's up close and personal. I like that about this. I love the tonality. You know, we've got this wonderful curve of the seahorse looking down, nice sharpness. Um, the composition is very pleasing. I like this a lot. Now, having said that, I do have one or two ideas to present to you for ways to further enhance this image.
Hmm.
If you would indulge me for a moment, I'm just going to drop it into Viveza real quick and try something.
Okay.
Um, I find this bright piece of, is this rock or coral?
Rock.
This bright piece of rock to be a little bit on the distracting side.
Okay.
And I think that by toning it down and then taking your structure and dialing in a little bit of negative structure, I mean, we want some of that there.
Okay.
All right?
Hmm.
And just toning that rock down so that it's not in our face. And we're going to do the same thing in the corners as well, okay? These two corners. And I'm just going to copy this control point down here and on this corner up here as well, especially on this white reflection here and there. Just tone it down slightly. And then I'm going to attach a control point to the seahorse itself,
Hmm.
and I'm going to up the brightness just a wee bit. And I'm going to add a bit of contrast, if you will. And then I'm going to see what structure does. Oh, yeah, the structure brings out a lot. Okay?
Okay.
Maybe a touch of saturation, although we don't really need much of that. And then I'm going to copy this down to the yellow areas of the body. I don't want to put it on the white areas because they're already nice and bright. Okay?
Okay.
And what I'm trying to do is to create a dimensional offset between the face of the seahorse and these background objects. Now, on this rock, I am going to try darkening up that just a little bit more there. Yeah, that's enough. Now let's do a before and after on that and take a look, see what that did. Okay, there is the before. There is the after. See how the seahorse jumps out to the foreground by doing that?
Hmm.
And all we did was we slightly shifted that background a little bit softer and just ever so slightly darker while brightening the seahorse itself.
Yeah.
Now, the brightening of the yellow of the seahorse, that's kind of a subjective thing. This image would have been good by just darkening the rocks a bit
Hmm.
in these white spots here and here. And you could have left the body of the seahorse the same because there's a dimensionality built into that with this white standing out.
Hmm.
And by brightening the yellow, we kind of subtract a little from that white. So that's a subjective thing, and that's for you to consider down the line, you know, which way you like to do it. But the point that I wish to make to you here is that by darkening the background and policing these bright edges here, okay, and darkening those slightly, we make the seahorse stand out and give it a three-dimensionality look and feel. I am rethinking now that perhaps I shouldn't have lightened the yellow because I really like how. What are these? Is this?
It's just part of the seahorse's skin.
I really like how it stands out here, how it has caught that flash, and it seems to stand exterior to the yellow body.
Hmm.
And by me lightening the body, that actually takes away from that a little, I think. What do you think?
I do like the darkening of the outside, but I probably would have left the body alone.
Yeah. So you see, and this is the joy of post-processing like this.
Hmm.
We can go back and we can do before and afters and make these decisions and change. But the real point that I was trying to make was to darken this background, and especially these two white spots up here because they were really detracting.
Right. I had tried cropping it because it was distraction, and I tried cropping it, but then it felt like the seahorse had nowhere to go, so I
Mhm.
reopened it up and left it
Yeah.
alone.
You're familiar, of course, with the Nick tools, right?
I've dabbled with them, but I mostly fiddle with Lightroom.
Okay.
So,
Boy, I hope I can convince you to dabble just a little bit more with these tools because you can see what just these simple edits did to this with that background.
yeah.
Okay. Lovely picture. Absolutely love you. I'm going to give you 2 points for that, 2.5 really. Okay. Because the changes I suggested were just so utterly minor. You know what I'm saying?
Hmm.
Okay. Let's talk about the stars.
This was a multi-shot. I believe it's a pano.dng,
Okay.
or it was. Yeah, it is. And I I've done a few before, and as somebody pointed out in my pre-critique, it's not extremely sharp, and I haven't had an issue with sharpness before, because I use the LCD and zoom in on a particular star, and then I manually focus it until that one, and I took my shots. So the only thing we could picture was or think of was it was a little breezy. So that might have been shaking my camera on the tripod while I was taking the shots.
That is possible.
Maybe, because I didn't even notice it until I somebody asked about the not so sharpness of the picture, and then I, racking my brain thinking of what was wrong with it. That's the only thing I could come up with. So I was up, most of the night taking this shot, and then I waited and got a sunrise over on the other side of um, where it started. There was a big lagoon and mountains, and it was a really pretty
Okay.
sunrise. So um, I wasn't in a hurry or anything. I just think I didn't. Here in Arizona, when I do night shots, we don't really have windy nights. They're pretty calm. So I think being on the ocean, and it probably was just too windy and shook my camera too much. Um,
Okay.
but it's one of my more favorite ones because you can see the Milky Way in it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so that's why I picked it instead of one of my better shots, but not my.
Okay. All right. Good. Good pre-visualization, pre-setup. How many shots did you combine for this one?
Um, I don't remember. 4 or 5.
Do you remember the shutter speed for each of those?
I can look. Um, Actually, that was only 3 shots.
Okay.
Let me see if it'll tell me. Hmm. It's on a different hard drive, so it won't give me
Okay.
the
All right. That's fine.
information.
It was just a curiosity for me. You seem to have captured a satellite here.
Hmm.
Okay. That is exactly what that is. Something in space moving across the sky. Um, okay. Now, one more question. The 3 shots that you did, was this to build the pano and you took vertical shots?
Um, No, I took across the horizon, so a left, a middle, and a right
Okay.
with a 14 millimeter. I believe that was my Rokinon.
Okay. All right. Good enough. I have enough information then. Boy, I love the composition. And they were absolutely right. It is slightly out of focus. Now, if we look at the stars themselves, you notice how it's really rounded with a halo around each?
Mm-hmm.
That can be caused by camera shake, as long as the camera shakes one direction and then back the other way in equal amount.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not going to discount. Now, see, these are more oblong. So this speaks more to a shake problem than to a not being focused issue. All right. Now, I also look at this. You've got good brightness and detail down here in the foreground. But the lights over here
Mm-hmm.
are a distraction.
Right.
I realize that we can't do much about the light pollution down here, but I would suggest just considering a crop in, if you will. Not that kind of crop, though. More something like this. What camera did you use for this?
That might also be my 5 DSR.
Okay. Maybe
Yeah.
something like that. Okay. Come in a little bit. Yeah, come in a little bit more. Go edge to edge and just take this area out here on the left.
Okay.
I think that's a small price to pay in terms of real estate to get rid of this light pollution over here in this lower corner.
Yeah.
All right. Boy, I really like this. I like how you set it up. I like how you did it. I also want to look at something else real quick here. I'm not going to do much. In fact, I'm not even going to use control points, but I am going to add some structure to it. So I want to bring out more of the Milky Way.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Add a bit more contrast to darken the sky. See how I darken the sky by adding a little bit of contrast? Not a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I like the fact that the corners are vignetted. I think that works very well, and it draws our attention into the center where your main subject is. And I would not do anything other than that to this image. You know, a slight crop and maybe enhancing the stars themselves. Let's fit this. And let's look at, see, just a slight addition of some contrast. Brings out that darker sky a little bit better and enhances the Milky Way, and a little bit of structure
Mm-hmm.
brings out more of the Milky Way. Simple things. I think that you did a really, really great job on this. I love this. I'd love to see some more of this style of work from you too in the future if you get the chance to get out and do it. I know with your work hours that this is difficult.
Yeah.
And plus, not to mention the fact that you got to be out late at night to do this.
Yeah, I've made the mistake many times trying to do it right after the sun goes down, and it never works. You know, you have to wait about 3 hours after the sun completely disappears. So
Okay.
I try to take them between
How do
11.
how do you find your stars in the sky that you want to shoot at? How do you get the direction and the elevation?
Well, I guess I just picture on this one I shot towards the land because behind me is the ocean, and it was cloudy out over the ocean.
Okay, which direction am I facing here?
North.
Okay. Would you remind me later on in the week to give you a name of some apps that will really help you get set up fast and point you in the exact right direction uh,
Mhm.
for each of these groupings of stars that you want to shoot. Um, Another possible direction is to shoot to the south. But there are some really great tools. What kind of phone do you use?
An Android
Okay. All right.
Nexus 6.
All right. I will get that information for you, okay?
Okay.
I'm going to give you a 2.5 on this one, too.
Okay.
Like I said, in the future, sweep the edges just a wee bit more and get rid of this area down
Right.
here, okay?
In Lightroom, I think I switched. I did 2 gradient filters now.
Oh,
Um,
good.
so the one reduces the bottom to get rid of that, and then the top I increased some contrast and uh, up the uh, highlights and
Okay.
saturation and decrease the darks. And it looks a little bit better, but I didn't re-export it and re-upload it. But it's
Okay.
um,
Well, Lightroom has some very powerful tools in it.
right.
But what it doesn't have is the ability to work in 16 bits, which is, you really want that 16 bits coming out of that new camera of yours.
Yeah.
Um, but boy, I admire the effort that you put into this. Fabulous, fabulous image. All right, tell me about this guy.
Um, I believe he's an emerald tree boa. I was at uh, an aquarium
Mm-hmm.
in DC, I believe, and uh, I had my macro lens on,
Okay.
my 100 millimeter, and I wanted more of him in focus, but I couldn't get it with the very low lighting. He was in a kind of a dark area, and I was doing handheld. I didn't have my tripod out, um, so I kind of went with that. I couldn't get his whole head in focus, and put the focus right on his eye, and made that the point of the picture.
Right.
So, you know, accidentally on purpose.
I hear you. Okay, you got 1/80th of a second at f2.8, and this was taken. Let's see, what was this taken with? The 5DS. Is this a
Right.
DSR?
Uh-huh.
Okay. All right, so I got enough information there. With this camera, there is no reason why you can't go up to, say, 6400 ISO.
Mm-hmm.
And at 1/80th of a second, you could afford to increase your aperture to, say, 5.6 and get a
Mm-hmm.
little bit more in focus. Now, how far away from the glass of the aquarium were you from the snake?
I think I was touching the glass. So I didn't put, because you'd see my reflection in the glass of the um, um, of his partition. I can't think
Okay.
of the name.
All right, you see how the light is coming up like this
Mm-hmm.
from the right? This speaks to light leak between the end of the lens and the glass. You may want to consider getting yourself a rubber lens hood for your macro lens,
Mm-hmm.
and then that will allow you to push that lens hard up against the glass and not damage the lens or the glass, and to block any light leaking in from the sides, which will enable you to control this area here without these streaks of light.
Okay.
This is his body, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Um, and this is really unfortunate, but this is an artifact of shooting at 2.8. But even shooting at 2.8, you have his eye crystal sharp. So that's very well done, controlling your focus for shooting handheld. But given the bright spots on the body of the snake and being totally out of focus, And then we have these areas here of the leaf that you just can't police out. I mean, we need to really, on shots like this, to try very hard to police the edges, but this is just impossible for you to do because you're shooting through an aquarium. This is a shot that you should possibly consider going and reshooting again.
Mm-hmm.
Should you get access to this particular beastie again, and hope that they're in a slightly different position, because as it stands, there's not much that we can do with this image. You did the best you could with what you had.
Right.
But again, think about the rubber lens hood, which will help with light leaking. And I'm not seeing any reflection, so you controlled that very well. We do have a good bokeh, but you're going to get that at f2.8. And for this particular shot, you really needed to be at 5.6 or 8 even.
Right.
And given the hardship that you face shooting this, I would bump that ISO up and then just clean up the noise in post-processing. Give yourself that f8. Okay?
Okay.
Bump that ISO up. And one of the powerful tools in the NIC tools is that define. Just run the define in the automatic mode, do your post-processing, and then go in and evaluate areas for noise. And how I do that is I simply magnify it, and I'll go way in, and I'm looking for grain, and I'm not seeing a lot here. Okay? So, I mean, I'm not really seeing any much of an indication that you're shooting at a higher ISO, except in the edges here around the dark and the mid-green tones. And Define will take all that out for you, so you could go much, much higher.
Okay.
Okay? Yeah, higher ISO, more depth of field. So, I mean, you've got to shoot at f8. And in order to get that, you're going to have to bump that ISO up to about 64,000 to be able to do that. Okay, I'm going to give you a 1.5 on this image. But even this has promise if you could go back and revisit it. And don't be afraid of using those higher ISOs, okay?
Right.
You have a phenomenal camera, and it will do it. And it'll do a good job at it. Boy, you have way more than enough points to level up. So this is done. So I'm going to get out of here and close Photoshop, but I do want to talk to you about something else. I want to draw your attention to something.
You didn't want to do the tiger, or?
Oh, you know what? I didn't get the tiger.
It's right there.
I did not get it into Photoshop. Let me drop that in again.
Oh, okay.
I'm bad. So for some reason that didn't load in. Okay. But before I jump into the tiger, let me go back. I want you to notice something. You have your camera set to the sRGB color space.
Mm-hmm.
You spent a buttload of money on that wonderful camera system. sRGB is really, really good for web page work. And some print companies demand sRGB because they don't want to invest in a wide color gamut printing system. But having said that, you want to get the best possible image that you can out of your camera system. You've spent a bundle on it. sRGB only has about 2/3 of the color gamut that Adobe RGB 1998 has, and that is the other built-in color space for your camera. And I'd like to suggest to you that you consider changing this sRGB to Adobe 1998.
Okay.
It will give you way more colors in your images. Okay?
Okay.
So let's blow out of here. Let's talk about the tiger. Yeah, I did see this when I initially looked at your images, but for some reason it just did not open in Photoshop for me. So excuse me, please.
It's forgiven.
Okay, so we're in a zoo. Tell me about the image.
Um, I saw this tiger. Um, it was pacing around, and I had pulled out my tripod, so I was trying to take some shots on the tripod of different things. I had a 400 millimeter lens, I believe, or 100 to 400, and he kept moving too much for me to get a nice close shot of him or her. I don't know what it was, and so I left and I came back, and it was playing in the water with its ball. So I set up again and took some shots, and then I walked around to over in the area where he's looking or she's looking, and I didn't like that angle, so I walked back over here and I grabbed this one. And I liked after I got it in to work on it. It's really clear, and she's in focus. So I kept it, um, and I liked the image. I liked the head turn. I like in the middle of playing with a ball. So I'd gnaw on it, and it would slip out of its paws, and then it would go chase it again, and just like it didn't have a care in the world. So it was kind of a great image of, it wasn't just lazing around because it had nothing to do, being all cooped up. It was actually, enjoying its time, it looked like.
Yeah, no, you're right. It's a wonderful image. So many people frown on captive animal photography, but I love this. You've got her in an activity of play. I think this is great. The composition is lovely. I like the post-processing. I don't think you need to make any changes whatsoever to the post-processing. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
The composition is good, but I would like to draw your attention to maybe one other small consideration, and that is the fact that we're not level here, and then we have this line coming in of this wall, and it's a slight distraction. So I want to show you a quick and easy fix for that doesn't work on every image, and you probably already know this, but I'd like to go through it with your indulgence for a minute.
Yeah.
And to do this, we have to make a copy of the background. So I'm going to, well, that's interesting. Let's look at this. Image mode, RGB 8 bits. Okay, there's no reason for that. There we go. It wouldn't let me it wouldn't allow me to do a background copy, but this little technique requires a second layer, okay?
Mm-hmm.
So this has to be done in Photoshop. Once we've made a copy of the background layer, then we can go up under Edit, and then Free Transform or Transform. I like Transform better, and go into the Skew. And then we'll simply take this corner and we will lift it up, all right, and make that level. And then we'll take this corner and we will move it this way. Now I know we're distorting the tiger. Bear with me a little. I'm going to bring her back in a little bit. Like I said, this doesn't work with every image because it's going to distort everything just a wee bit. So I'm going to come back out this way and bring her back into perspective again, okay?
Okay.
Now notice I have extra data here that's not supposed to be here. That's the layer behind it. I'm going to hit Enter and accept this edit. And now if I take this away, all right, we're going from this to this, okay? And now you're either going to recrop here, okay, to take that out, Or you could just do a simple fill by selecting that area and going to Edit, Fill, Content Aware. And it's going to look at the area around the area that I want to fill and copy the area in from around it and take that corner out.
Mm-hmm.
All right? Now, it's still not straight, but if we do any more of a perspective adjustment on it, we're going to continue to skew the shape of her body.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? I think that this is a decent compromise. Okay?
Okay.
But I might even consider doing a wee bit more and maybe cropping out a bit more of that edge. Okay? Yeah, like that. I don't want to make this perfectly straight because that's going to skew the tiger's body too much. But I do like this a little bit better, simply because if we go back to this, my eyes are drawn to this piece of the wall at the edge of the pool, and it's distracting in that it takes me away from the main subject here.
Right. And I had cropped that out and made the subject, bigger, so
Sure.
because it was a distraction. So.
Now, I don't know where you were standing. It was obviously there was a fence between you and the tiger, right?
Yes.
Could you have shifted a little bit to the right and reposition?
Yes.
To make this wall straight?
Yeah, I could have, and that's I need to remind myself of being aware of everything in the frame more.
Yeah, and that just comes with practice. It's better to get it right in the camera than for us to have to do these styles of edits in the computer. Okay, because in order to do this, we did flatten the tiger a little.
Mm-hmm.
But even that's minor. It's a minor trade-off for a more pleasing composition. Whereas had you just taken maybe, let's look at this, maybe 2 steps to the right, you could have taken more of an angle like this into the tiger.
Right.
And then you wouldn't have had this to worry about.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? I like this. This is a good learning image. And you're right. Boy, that tiger is sharp. You did a really good job. You're on the tripod?
On the tripod.
Good work. Good capture. But always try and be aware of the edges of your image. Sweep around them in the viewfinder when you're setting up the camera.
Mm-hmm.
And try and fix these before you take your picture.
Right.
You will be way, way more happy. All right?
Okay.
I loved working on your images today. This was great fun for me. And I appreciate your images too. They're very well done. You show great potential here, both in the underwater and in the wildlife landscapes. I congratulate you on a job well done.
Thank you.
I am going to level you up to level 5. I thank everybody for coming and supporting you. Let me stop the broadcast real quick.